somehow, after years of travel, it was in perhaps the most un-American of places where I first experienced a particular flavor of freedom. The ability to say whatever I thought or felt without fear of repercussion. It was a strange form of liberation through accepting rejection. And as someone who had been starved of this kind of blunt expression most of his life, first by an emotionally repressed family life, then later by a meticulously constructed false display of confidence, I got drunk on it like it was the finest damn vodka I'd ever had. The month I spent in St. Petersburg went by in a blur, and by the end I didn't want to leave. Travel is a fantastic self-development tool because it extricates you from the values of your culture and shows you that another society can live with entirely different values and still function and not hate themselves. This exposure to different cultural values and metrics then forces you to re examine what seems obvious in your own life and to consider that perhaps it's not necessarily the best way to live. In this case, Russia had me re examining the bullshitty, fake nice communication that is so common in Anglo culture and asking myself if this wasn't somehow making us more insecure around each other and worse at intimacy. I remember discussing the dynamic with my Russian teacher one day, and he had an interesting theory. Having lived under communism for so many generations with little to no economic opportunity and caged by a culture of fear, Russian society found the most valuable currency to be trust. And to build trust, you have to be honest. That means when things suck, you say so openly and without apology. You say so openly without apology. People's displays of unpleasant honesty were rewarded for the simple fact that they were necessarily necessary for survival. You had to know whom you could rely on and whom you couldn't, and you needed to know quickly. But in the free West, my Russian teacher continued, there existed an abundance of economic opportunity. So much economic opportunity that it became so much economic opportunity that it became far more valuable to present yourself in a certain way, even if it was false, than to actually be that way. Trust lost its values. Yeah, I'm reading a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So, yeah. Yes, guys. Hi there. I am reading a book. Yeah, by Mark Manson. Appearances and salesmanship became more advantageous forms of expression. Knowing a lot of people superficially was more beneficial than knowing a few people closely. Whoa, that's an interesting theory. This is why it became the norm in Western cultures to smile and say polite things even when you don't feel like it, to tell little white lies and agree with someone whom you don't actually agree with. Okay. This is why people learn to pretend to be friends with people they don't actually like, to buy things they don't actually want. The economic system promotes such deception. Oh, wow. Ah, that's interesting. Okay, Fallen Hybrid asks me, how do you rate the book on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, let's finish it first, okay? I like your glasses. Thank you. Thank you so much. The real Mav. Does it bounce? I don't understand. I don't get the question. The question certainly contains very interesting concepts. Oh, thank you to those two people who sent me likes. I encourage others to do the same. Okay. The book contains very interesting concepts and ideas, and I already have several pages folded because they were very interesting and appealing ideas, concepts, quotes, some original stuff. So, yeah, the book is good. Maybe right now I'd say at least 6 out of 10, maybe more. Let's just go till the end. Okay, and I like his language, the way he uses the F word and all the other words. Yeah. Okay. So thanks for your comments and thanks for your likes. Okay, three people already sent likes my way. Thank you so much, guys. High five. Uh, so let's just continue. This is wait, yeah. The downside of this is that you never know in the West if you can completely trust the person you're talking to. Sometimes this is the case even among good friends or family members. There is such pressure in the West to be likable that people often reconfigure their entire personality depending on the person they're dealing with. So, guys, do you agree with this? Do you think these ideas are correct, or you'd say no? I am not born in the United States. I moved in here recently, just around 5 weeks ago. So, yes, I agree. The real map says, I think correct. Okay, okay, real map. All right. Next subheading is entitled Rejection Makes Your Life Better. Okay. So let's see what the author has to say about rejection. As an extension of our positivity slash consumer culture, many of us have been indoctrinated with the belief that we should try to be as inherently accepting and affirmative as possible. This is a cornerstone of many of the so called positive thinking books. Open yourself up to opportunities, be accepting, say yes to everything and everyone, and so on. But we need to reject something. Otherwise, we stand for nothing. If nothing is better or more desirable than anything else, then we are empty and our life is meaningless. We are without values and therefore live our life without any purpose. Okay. I disagree respectfully. Up of Leighton says, okay, okay, thanks for your opinion as well. Yeah. You can maybe even elaborate a little, like why do you disagree and where are you writing from? Are you in the US and from what state and why do you disagree? That's, for me, it's interesting to interact with my viewers and give and also take. Okay, so I'll be happy to read your comments. Hey, I like this idea actually when he says accepting everything means accepting nothing. Because if you say yes, let's say this thing is white, and then someone says this thing is black, and you are okay, guys, you both are right, it depends on the perspective, la 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 la, it means it's just nonsense, you know? So I disagree with this idea. He says we need to reject something. Otherwise we stand for nothing. Yeah. The avoidance of rejection, both giving and receiving it, is often sold to us as a way to make ourselves feel better. But avoiding rejection gives us short term pleasure by making us rudderless and directionless in the long term. Okay? To truly appreciate something, you must confine yourself to it. There's a certain level of joy and meaning that you reach in life only when you've spent decades investing in a single relationship, a single craft, a single career. And you cannot achieve those decades of investment without rejecting the alternatives. Okay. The act of choosing a value for yourself requires rejecting alternative values. If I choose to make, yeah, he makes sense. For instance, if I say life is a value, then I cannot say death is a value too, or else, they kind of cancel each other, right? There is contradiction. Or I should make it clearer, and I should say life is a value in context A, like if two people respect each other, if there's no threat. And then I could say death is a value in context B, when someone is threatening my life. Yeah, okay, that would be acceptable. Yeah, if you give context, then you could, what's the word? Maybe balance your values and explain that What may seem contradictory from the first sight is not really contradictory. Yeah, but you've got to be specific about that. Okay. If I choose to make my marriage the most important part of my life, that means I'm probably choosing not to make cocaine fueled hooker orgies an important part of my life. If I'm choosing to judge myself based on my ability to have open and accepting friendships, that means I'm rejecting trashing my friends behind their backs. These are all healthy decisions, yet they require rejection at every turn. The point is this: we all must give a fuck about something in order to value something. And to value something, we must reject what is not that something. To value X, we must reject non X. Okay, this is basic logic, yes. I think this goes back to the law of uh, identity. Yeah. And then the three basic laws of logic. Yeah. Law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and law of the exclusion of the third. I might make an actually I think I'll make an exclusive video which will be available to my paid subscribers on the topic. Three or four basic laws of logic. That's a very important subject actually. Yeah, okay. That rejection is an inherent and necessary part of maintaining our values and therefore our identity. We are defined by what we choose to reject. And if we reject nothing, perhaps in fear of being rejected by something ourselves, we essentially have no identity at all. The desire to avoid rejection at all costs, to avoid confrontation and conflict, the desire to attempt to accept everything equally and to make everything cohere and harmonize, is a deep and subtle form of entitlement. Entitled people, because they feel as though they deserve to feel great all the time, avoid rejecting anything because doing so might make them or someone else feel bad. And because they refuse to reject anything, they live a valueless, pleasure driven, and self absorbed life. All they give a fuck about is sustaining the high a little bit longer to avoid the inevitable failures of their life, to pretend the suffering away. Rejection is an important and crucial life skill. Nobody wants to be stuck in a relationship that isn't making them happy. Nobody wants to be stuck in a business doing work they hate and don't believe in. Nobody wants to feel that they can't say what they really mean. Yet, people choose these things all the time. Honesty is a natural human craving. But part of having honesty in our lives is becoming comfortable with saying and hearing the word no. In this way, rejection actually makes our relationships better and our emotional lives healthier. Yeah. The next sub chapter is called Boundaries. Okay. Once upon a time, there were two youngsters, a boy and a girl. Their families hated each other, but the boy snuck into a party hosted by the girl's family because he was kind of a dick. The girl sees the boy, and Angel sings so sweetly to her lady parts. Okay, again. And Angel sings so sweetly to her lady parts that she instantly falls in love with him. Just like that. I think it's Romeo and Juliet. And so he sneaks into her garden and they decide to get married the next freaking day. Because, that's totally practical, especially when your parents want to murder each other. Jump ahead a few days. Their families find out about the marriage and throw a shit fit. Mercutio dies. The girl is so upset that she drinks a potion that will put her to sleep for 2 days. But unfortunately, the young couple hasn't learned the ins and outs of good marital communication yet, and the young girl totally forgets to mention something about it to her new husband. The young man therefore mistakes his new wife's self induced coma for suicide. He then totally loses his marbles and he commits suicide, thinking he's going to be with her in the afterlife or some shit. But then she wakes up from her 2 day coma only to learn that her new husband has committed suicide. So she has the exact same idea and kills herself too. The end. Romeo and Juliet is synonymous with romance in our culture today. It is seen as the love story in English speaking culture, an emotional ideal to live up to. Yet, when you really get down to what happens in the story, these kids are absolutely out of their fucking minds. And they just killed it themselves to prove it. It's suspected by many scholars that Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet not to celebrate romance, but rather to satirize it, to show how absolutely naughty it was. He didn't mean for the play to be a glorification of love. In fact, he meant it to be the opposite, a big flashing neon sign blinking, "Keep out," with police tape around it saying, "Do not cross." For most of human history, romantic love was not celebrated as it is now. In fact, up until the mid 19th century or so, love was seen as an unnecessary and potentially dangerous psychological impediment to the more important things in life. You know, like farming well and or marrying a guy with a lot of sheep. Young people were often forcibly steered clear of their romantic passions in favor of practical economic marriages that would yield stability for both them and their families. But today, we all get brain boners for this kind of batshit crazy love. It dominates our culture, and the more dramatic, the better. Whether it's Ben Affleck working to destroy an asteroid to save the Earth for the girl he loves, or Mel Gibson murdering hundreds of Englishmen and fantasizing about his raped and murdered wife while being tortured to death, or that elven chick giving up her immortality to be with Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, or stupid romantic comedies where Jimmy Fallon forgoes his Red Sox playoff tickets because Drew Barrymore has like needs or something. If this sort of romantic love were cocaine, then as a culture we'd all be like Tony Montana in Scarface, burying our faces in a fucking mountain of it, screaming, "Say hello to my little friend." The problem is that we're finding out that YouTube is going to kill the monetization of this video too. I think because of all those terms. But okay, let's not give a fuck about that. Okay, the book is good. So I think I'll take Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, or The Fountainhead after this one, probably Atlas Shrugged. And yeah, it will be a great option as well, but and much safer in terms of monetization. Okay. Okay. The problem is that we're finding out that romantic love is kind of like cocaine, like frighteningly similar to cocaine, like stimulates the exact same parts of our brain as cocaine, like gets you high and makes you feel good for a while, but also creates as many problems as it solves, as does cocaine. Most elements of romantic love that we pursue, the dramatic and dizzyingly emotional displays of affection, the topsy turvy ups and downs, aren't healthy, genuine displays of love. In fact, they are often just another form of entitlement playing out through people's relationships. I know, that makes me sound like such a downer. Seriously, what kind of guy shits on romantic love? But hear me out. The truth is, there are healthy forms of love and unhealthy forms of life. Again, I remind you guys to send likes my way, okay? If you're watching the live, if you like the book and me reading it for you, send likes and comments my way, okay? The truth is, there are healthy forms of love and unhealthy forms of love. Unhealthy forms of love No, unhealthy love is based on two people trying to escape their problems through their emotions for each other. In other words, they're using each other as an escape. Oh, interesting. Healthy love is based on two people acknowledging and addressing their own problems with each other's support. Wow, that's unusual. Hmm. Okay, I'm folding this page to a very close person I know might benefit from this. Good. Fantasizing about his. Sorry, we have been here. Yeah, yeah, we've done this. Uh-huh. The difference between a healthy and an unhealthy relationship comes down to two things. Okay. One, how well each person in the relationship accepts responsibility. Two, the willingness of each person to both reject and be rejected by their partner. Anywhere there is an unhealthy or toxic relationship, there will be a poor and porous sense of responsibility on both sides, and there will be an inability to give and or receive rejection. Wherever there is a healthy and loving relationship, there will be clear boundaries between the two people and their values, and there will be an open avenue of giving and receiving rejection when necessary. Okay. By boundaries, I mean the delineation between two people's responsibilities for their own problems. People in a healthy relationship with strong boundaries will take responsibility for their own values and problems and not take responsibility for their partner's values and problems. People in a toxic relationship with poor or no boundaries will regularly avoid responsibility for their own problems and or take responsibility for their partner's problems. What do poor boundaries look like? Here are some examples. Quote, you can't go out with your friends without me. You know how jealous I get. You have to stay home with me. Another quote, my coworkers are idiots. They always make me late to meetings because I have to tell them how to do their jobs. Okay. Another one. I can't believe you made me feel so stupid in front of my own sister. Never disagree with me in front of her again. Another example. I'd love to take that job in Milwaukee, but my mother would never forgive me for moving so far away. And another one. I can date you, but can you not tell my friend Cindy? She gets really insecure when I have a boyfriend and she doesn't. In each scenario, the person is either taking responsibility for problems slash emotions that are not theirs, or demanding that someone else take responsibility for their problems slash emotions. In general, entitled people fall into one of two traps in their relationships. Either they expect other people to take responsibility for their problems. Quote, I wanted a nice relaxing weekend at home. You should have known that and cancelled your plans. Unquote. Or they take on too much responsibility for other people's problems. Quote, she just lost her job again, but it's probably my fault because I wasn't as supportive of her as I could have been. I'm going to help her rewrite her resume tomorrow. Unquote. Entitled people adopt these strategies in their relationships, as with everything, to help avoid accepting responsibility for their own problems. As a result, their relationships are fragile and fake, products of avoiding inner pain rather than embracing a genuine appreciation and adoration of their partner. This goes not just for romantic relationships, by the way, but also for family relationships and friendships. An overbearing mother may take responsibility for every problem in her children's lives. Her own entitlement then encourages an entitlement in her children. as they grow up to believe other people should always be responsible for their problems. Oh, this is why the problems in your romantic relationships always eerily resemble the problems in your parents' relationship. Wow. Okay. Whew. When you have murky areas of responsibility for your emotions and actions, areas where it's unclear who is responsible for what, whose fault is what, why you're doing what you're doing, you never develop strong values for yourself. Your only value becomes making your partner happy, or your only value becomes your partner making you happy. This is self defeating, of course, and relationships characterized by such murkiness usually go down like the Hindenburg with all the drama and fireworks. People can't solve your problems for you, and they shouldn't try because that won't make you happy. You can't solve other people's problems for them either, because that likewise won't make them happy. The mark of an unhealthy relationship is two people who try to solve each other's problems in order to feel good about themselves. Rather, a healthy relationship is when two people solve their own problems in order to feel good about each other. The setting of proper boundaries doesn't mean you can't help or support your partner or be helped and supported yourself. You both should support each other, but only because you choose to support and be supported, not because you feel obligated or entitled. Entitled people who blame others for their own emotions and actions do so because they believe that if they constantly paint themselves as victims, eventually someone will come along and save them, and they will receive the love they've always wanted. Entitled people who take the blame for other people's emotions and actions do so because they believe that if they fix their partner and save him or her, they will receive the love and appreciation they've always wanted. These are the yin and yang of any toxic relationship, the victim and the saver, the person who starts fires because it makes her feel important, and the person who puts out fires because it makes him feel important. These two types of people are drawn strongly to one another, and they usually end up together. Their pathologies match one another perfectly. Often they've grown up with parents who each exhibit one of these traits as well. So their model for a happy relationship is one based on entitlement and poor boundaries. Sadly, they both fail in meeting the other's actual needs. In fact, their pattern of over blaming and over accepting blame perpetuates the entitlement and shitty self worth that have been keeping them from getting their emotional needs met in the first place. The victim creates more and more problems to solve, not because additional real problems exist, but because it gets her the attention and affection she craves. The saver solves and solves, not because she actually cares about the problems, but because she believes she must fix others' problems in order to deserve attention and affection for herself. In both cases, the intentions are selfish and conditional and therefore self sabotaging, and genuine love is rarely experienced. The victim, if he really loved the saver, would say, "Look, this is my problem. You don't have to fix it for me. Just support me while I fix it myself." That would actually be a demonstration of love. Taking responsibility for your own problems and not holding your partner responsible for them. If the saver really wanted to save the victim, the saver would say, "Look, you're blaming others for your own problems. Deal with this yourself." And in a sick way, that would actually be a demonstration of love, helping someone solve their own problems. Instead, Victims and savers both use each other to achieve emotional highs. It's like an addiction they fulfill in one another. Ironically, when presented with emotionally healthy people to date, they usually feel bored or lack chemistry with them. They pass on emotionally healthy, secure individuals because the secure partner's solid boundaries don't feel exciting enough to stimulate the constant highs necessary in the entitled person. Wow, these paragraphs I think are so valuable for people, yeah, in relationships. Wow. For victims, the hardest thing to do in the world is to hold themselves accountable for their problems. They've spent their whole life believing that others are responsible for their fate. That first step of taking responsibility for themselves is often terrifying. For savers, the hardest thing to do in the world is to stop taking responsibility for other people's problems. They've spent their whole life feeling valued and loved only when they're saving somebody else. So letting go of this need is terrifying to them as well. If you make a sacrifice for someone you care about, it needs to be because you want to, not because you feel obligated or because you fear the consequences of not doing so. If your partner is going to make a sacrifice for you, it needs to be because he or she genuinely wants to, not because you've manipulated the sacrifice through anger or guilt. Acts of love are valid only if they're performed without conditions or expectations. It can be difficult for people to recognize the difference between doing something out of obligation and doing it voluntarily. So here's a litmus test. Ask yourself, if I refused, how would the relationship change? Similarly, ask, if my partner refused something I wanted, how would the relationship change? If the answer is that a refusal would cause a blowout of drama and broken china plates, then that's a bad sign for your relationship. It suggests that your relationship is conditional, based on superficial benefits received from one another, rather than on unconditional acceptance of each other, along with each other's problems. People with strong boundaries are not afraid of a temper tantrum, an argument, or getting hurt. People with weak boundaries are terrified of those things and will constantly mold their own behavior to fit the highs and lows of their relational emotional roller coaster. People with strong boundaries understand that it's unreasonable to expect two people to accommodate each other 100% and fulfill every need the other has. People with strong boundaries understand that they may hurt someone's feelings sometimes, but ultimately they can't determine how other people feel. People with strong boundaries understand that a healthy relationship is not about controlling one another's emotions, but rather about each partner supporting the other in their individual growth and in solving their own problems. It's not about giving a fuck about everything your partner gives a fuck about. It's about giving a fuck about your partner regardless of the fucks he or she gives. That's unconditional love, baby. Okay, the next subheading is called How to Build Trust. Ooh, that sounds very useful. How to build trust. I think most probably honesty is a cornerstone. And I love this phrase, this idea very much. Honesty is the best policy. Yeah. Then freedom through commitment, another subheading. And the final chapter, most probably, this is the last one. Yeah. It is entitled And Then You Die. That's chapter 9. Memento mori, I think in Latin, that's the phrase. Is remember about death. Remember that you will die. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Manson. Um, in the end, yes, we have actually, I could show you that thing right now. We have Mark's photo here and his social media links. Yeah, there it is. He's the author, and here we are, all his social media things. Oh, he's not on YouTube. Interesting. Well, he is on YouTube, but here he didn't leave his YouTube link as well. Okay. Maybe he knew that, yeah, YouTube would censor and uh, but Facebook is censoring a lot of stuff too, yes. When you use certain words, your post visibility falls, for example. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Again, those four people, thank you for the likes. And others, whenever you rewatch this video, please send likes my way. Likes, comments, reshares, and you can become a paid subscriber. With that, you'll get an access to a course I've created entitled Introduction to Practical Philosophy. You will discover what philosophy is, the definition, and the explanation of the definition. We will go through the five branches or components of philosophy, and we'll discover the philosophy, the basics of the philosophy of objectivism, which I call practical because they are very practical. That's it. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye bye.